Hello, I'm Dylan.
And I'm Keon.
And this is Zenith, that podcast where we need to kill her ourselves, because this week we watched Traitor.
Written by Robert Holmes.
Directed by David Sullivan Proudfoot.
And aired on October 12th, 1981. That's gotta be a pseudonym, you know?
No, I don't think it is. I checked his page. I don't think it is. I don't think I quite nailed the delivery of that like Paul Darrow did later in this episode.
No, I mean, I don't think anyone can really deliver that line as Paul Darrow does in the episode.
Paul Darrow has quite a few moments like that in this episode. Hang on, I just got to take out my notes for this episode, even though, really, who took notes on this? I'm just going to say right off the bat that I found this episode rather boring.
Yeah, we should just preface this entire thing. I think this is the worst episode of Bleak 7. So if you don't want to hear us like rail into this episode, just don't listen.
Well, I wouldn't go that far.
Oh, I would.
And also, I'm going to preface this by saying that I found Volcano extremely boring, but I learned my lesson from Volcano, and I actually tried to pay attention to this episode, unlike Volcano. So I actually did pay attention to this, even though the whole time I was like trying to claw my eyes out because I was so bored.
Yeah, I tried to pay attention, as I always do, and as I usually do, but this episode wasn't giving me much to pay attention to.
Well, I think there are a lot of cool concepts in this episode. I think they're wrapped up in a really, really boring plot. And not only is it boring, I think it's predictable, and I think it's just like really unengaging. But I do think there are things in this episode that I think are pretty interesting that would have been really good in a better script.
There's like one thing that I thought was cool from this.
Well, let's explain the plot, and I'll bring up the things that I think are pretty interesting when they come up.
Sure.
I think. In regards to Doctor Who, we're still, I believe, in the interseason era. Before series, 19 airs.
Yeah.
And
I mean, I don't know. I'm just saying, yeah.
Yeah, so. No, yeah, we are. Interestingly enough, episode that's really boring, coming third in the season again, like Volcano.
Yeah, that is interesting. You know, coming right after an episode with power in the title.
We're really stretching these connections to some extent, but I'm okay with it. I'll let it slide. All right, so the episode begins with this interrogation, actually, between this Federation captain, whose name I have no idea.
Good luck with the names. I knew Hunda.
I knew Hunda.
Sleer was obviously Servalan from the moment her voice showed up.
I knew Lights, and I knew Sleer.
Should have just all been like Lights, Camera, Action.
See, Lights I really thought was actually spelled Lights. Turns out it's Leitz.
Lei. Wow. TC or TZ?
Z.
Huh. All right.
So it begins this interrogation by Hunda, I think.
No, of Hunda. Hunda is one of the rebels. So this whole situation is a little Terry Nation-esque. I struggled for our segment, how would this episode be different if Terry Nation wrote it? Because a lot of this is kind of just out of the Terry Nation handbook, I feel like.
I agree, and we'll talk about that later on, but there are some things that I feel like could be slightly different that would make it more Terry Nation-esque, but not a lot. I'm just looking up the name of the planet that they're on, because I don't remember that either. Hellatrix,
right, and they're Helits?
Yeah.
Which is interesting. No, but, I mean, this is written by Robert Holmes, who's sort of from the same... He's sort of from the same era as Terry Nation.
He's cut from the same cloth.
Right, sort of an older school writer, at least older, from a different sort of group than Chris Boucher or Boucher, I guess, is how how John pronounced it. So maybe we've been saying it wrong this whole time.
Well, you can really pronounce names however you want.
Yeah, I mean, yeah.
Kind of like how I called Jeffrey Beavers Joffrey Beavers for like 2 episodes. That was solid.
Really? I don't remember that, but all right.
You don't remember that?
Nope.
Jeffrey.
All right. So, gosh.
They interrogate this guy Hunda.
Somehow. I forget how.
They let him go, because this is the thing. They're interrogating this guy Hunda, and he reveals, like, oh, he used to be part of this
resistance
school.
Movement. Oh, school?
And he's part of a resistance group now, but he used to be part of the school, because they want to get to this other guy, and they're like, you civilians give yourself such dumb names when you form resistance, like Star Major. And he's like, so what about the Star Major, whatever his name was? Like, who was he before the revolution? He's like, oh, he was like a teacher at the school. And he's like, oh, so what were you? And he's like, oh, I was like the head of the I was the head of the archaeology division or something like that. And they're like, oh, and he's like,
I don't remember any of this.
No, remember this? Because when I watched this, I was like, man, this is going to be such a cool episode. Because he was like, yeah, because we had this plan where we were going to we were investigating how low the flood levels had receded. And he's like, oh, well, why were you doing that? And he's like, oh, because we wanted to tunnel under the city, but they're all the tunnels are all flooded. We wanted to tunnel under the city and then blow it up from underneath.
Again, this is all Terry Nation-esque stuff. City infiltration, some ecological work and stuff like that, or environmental work.
And the guy's like, well, you're free to go. And he leaves. And then we cut to Scorpio. And this is when the story immediately started to go downhill for me, because the very first thing they're talking about is the Federation again. And they're like, man, the Federation is like growing in size to be really big. We got to stop them. We got to stop them.
Federation's always a pain in the neck.
Orak's like, they just took over the planet Helitrix, and Avon's like, damn, Federation's getting too big. We got to be the old crew that we used to be and like take them down. And I'm like, oh, really?
I mean, this is really out of left field, because Series C never even played it up this much. In fact, as Series C went on, they drifted away from this.
And we even get a mention of Blake. At some point in the middle of this story, Villa's like, man, this is exactly what Blake would do. And Avon's like, yeah, well, Blake wasn't the smartest of people. I'm like, are you insulting yourself with that statement? What's going on?
I do remember. What was the last episode that Robert Holmes wrote? It was in Series B or something, wasn't it?
I think it was in Series B. I don't think it was Gambit. And he wrote Killer. So, Killer was pretty good.
Which one was Killer again?
That was the one with Imapak.
Oh, yeah, that one was good. Great, even.
That had Servalan laughing as she shot people in the back.
Yeah. But yeah, I don't know. Maybe this is just the result of Robert Holmes. I don't know why I'm pinning this so much on Robert Holmes when it could easily be any number of other people. And in fact, probably was just a combination of things resulting in a not as good episode. But I don't know, maybe there's just this disconnect between where Blake 7 is now and where it was in Series B,
Maybe he just hadn't followed the story too much. I really hope this isn't indicative of where Series D is going.
I don't think so. Most of the things I've heard about Series D is there are a couple bad episodes at the beginning of it, but once it hits that mid-season mark, or maybe even a little earlier than that, you get some of the best episodes of Blake 7 ever.
That's good. I mean, again, I don't really think this is the worst episode ever made, but I just find it boring.
Which do you think? Because I do. I think this is the worst episode that we've seen so far. So what do you think is worse than this?
I mean, I definitely put Volcano down there.
You put Orak better than... or?
Yeah, I think I put Orak below this. If only because I think I like the concepts in this more than I like the concepts in Orak. I think this and Orak are very similar in that they're both really boring plot lines with really predictable kind of actions from literally everyone, and just being really uninteresting. But I do like some of the things they bring up in the story a little bit more than I do in Orak.
Huh, that's interesting.
Because I think this whole idea of futuristic archaeology I think is really cool. It's something that I always think about, what would archaeology look like in the future, right? How, I mean,
it's an interesting concept, uncovering things that we have today and looking at them as ancient relics.
Right. Which they've touched on Blake 7 before, too.
On the Keeper, kind of.
With the Keeper, and also with... I'm trying to remember what it's called now. It was in Series B. There was the tribe of people, and they all wore purple, and the leader was a puppet leader. Ah, shit.
Horizon?
Yeah, Horizon. Was it Horizon? The one where they're each of them teleports down individually and immediately gets captured.
Yeah, that was Horizon.
Horizon.
That wasn't Earth. That wasn't on Earth, though.
That wasn't on Earth, but there was the people were digging things up, and there was this culture that they had were trying to revive or whatever. Anyway.
Sort of.
They just kind of touched upon it barely, but
And that's the same here. They just kind of touch on it barely.
Yeah. Yeah. But they do bring back this idea of the tunnels and the lake later on.
Right. Which is a Terry Nation infiltration thing. Gotta get into the city with the tunnels and the lake.
Yeah, it's very Genesis of the Daleks, actually.
Very the Daleks, actually.
Yeah, because the Daleks, the Daleks, they just straight infiltrate the city, but like in Genesis, there was like the whole tunnels between the Thal encampment and the Dalek city that they went through, but like Harry Sullivan went over, and
That's actually interesting that we bring that up, because that's actually something I've been thinking about lately, is because we just rewatched, not just, but a month or two ago, rewatched the Daleks for a Doctor Who podcast, because we wanted to revisit some early episodes. But I noticed, and thinking about it over the past couple of weeks, I've noticed like a lot of similarities between the Daleks and Genesis of the Daleks, to the point where Genesis almost seems like sort of a remake.
Well, didn't we talk about that in our Genesis of the Daleks episode?
That was years ago. I don't remember.
I feel like we did. How we talked about there were a lot of similarities with the Daleks, and how Terry Nation like wanted to do the Daleks but better and different, and that's why he introduced Davros. And I'm sure
I don't remember.
We talked about that before.
I guess I forgot, and maybe I'm just reviving those memories like ancient relics of the past.
Or you might say like an
archaeologist.
No, I was gonna say like a voice from the past.
Oh, God. I could always just re-listen to the episode.
Yeah. Well, anyway, Avon's like, we got to go to Hellatrix.
Because I have to kill her myself. No, he doesn't say it now, but I'm just going to intersperse that in the episode where it doesn't belong. And in other episodes where it doesn't belong. Get ready to hear that line for the rest of Zenith.
Well, he decides they're going to Hellatrix because they got to figure out, because there's like a whole bunch of planets that are falling to the Federation really easily. And he calls it an empire again, which I think is interesting.
Yeah, I mean, and they discuss, I forget when this is, it's in a little bit actually, some of the Federation officers are discussing Servalan's death. So it seems like things have really taken off once Servalan.
Yeah, turns out Servalan was
the only one holding them back.
But then it turns out Servalan's still in command anyway, so... Big twist. Sorry, spoiler alert, I guess.
Right when Sleer's voice, right when you hear Sleer's voice, it's very noticeably, because it's altered. Mm-hmm. But if you've ever heard Jacqueline Pierce's voice, like that's her voice. It's not altered that much.
Yeah, I think Lights is like second in command. He reveals that like Commissioner Sleer is in charge of this planet,
and there's someone visiting. Right, we've seen this a lot in Blake 7. We saw it in Horizon. We also saw it. Mm-hmm. In that one episode, I think it was actually Seek, Locate, Destroy, where we see in Servalan's introduction, she's having like dinner with these guys and whatever.
Yeah.
Visitors sort of who are in command and assessing the situation. So I forget this guy's name, but he shows up.
And he gets killed anyway, so...
And they all die.
Well, this guy, I think, was supposed to be taking over command of this base, was kind of the thing, because they're like, oh, we haven't changed the office from like your predecessor yet, but you're going to have control. This is a little bit later, but we're going to explain it now, that this is when they reveal to this guy how they've been keeping the population subservient, is they're using this drug that they invented on this planet called, I'm going to look it up, Pylene 50.
Right, and this comes back in like what I thought was just the dumbest way possible.
Pylene 50. And they're like, if we do a super concentrated dose, because we've been seeing these shots of people like getting shot with lasers, like if we inject it with a laser or a super concentrated dosage, then it like removes or blocks the production of adrenaline, so it basically stops people from revolting.
Right.
And the guy's like, oh, does it make it like more suggestible? And it's like, no, but like they won't revolt because they don't produce adrenaline. They're just kind of more docile, so it's easier to take over.
Meanwhile, Hunda has reconvened with the rebel group, and they're going to enact this plan where he's going to be the only one to infiltrate. And I forget exactly what he's going to do, but he's going to like lead the way for the rest of them or something.
Yeah, but then they all get blown sky high, because it's also revealed at this moment, they're like, we put a tracer in Hunda and then we blew him up. And the guy's like, yeah, I saw that explosion when I was coming in. They're like, yeah, you saw us. We were using a live test subject for that.
Oh, yeah. Okay, so not Hunda. The guy who sort of leads them from then on is... and this is
like Hunda's second in command, who looks exactly like Hunda.
Yeah, this is another Terry Nation thing.
Hask.
Right, Hask, where the characters look very similar and have a very similar name, right? I just got Hunda and Hask confused, and their design is very similar.
Yeah, Hunda gets blown Kingdom Come with his rebel group.
Yep. So Hask is actually the one who enacts this plan. I forget exactly what the plan is.
Well, so the plan doesn't get...
engaging.
The plan doesn't get enacted till Dana and Tarrant beam down.
Right.
And I was thinking about this.
They sort of like meet halfway into the plan or something, like meet him.
Well, no, they beam down with a separate plan, and then Hask is like, hey, if you want to survive, come over here. And then,
right.
Then we only learn about the plan now when he explains it to Dana and Tarrant.
I like the combination of Dana and Tarrant again.
I like it too, but it's growing a little tiresome.
No, I mean, I don't think so. There's a lot of banter between them that I thought was good, that I thought was one of the best parts of the episode.
I mean, I really wanted to see Sue Lin in action.
That's true, yeah. We can talk about Sue Lin at the end,
because Sue Lin in this episode doesn't do anything. And, like, I know sometimes we say some characters don't do anything, but then we're kind of exaggerating. This is like a legitimate... She doesn't do anything.
Well, this makes sense, and this is why I'm really glad John was on for Rescue of all episodes, because he really put into perspective for us, I think, for how Sue Lin replaced Callie once they've realized that Callie was going to die.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's really obvious in the story how Sue Lin is a replacement for Callie.
Because, I mean, if this was Callie, would we really be calling this out to the extent that we are? Yeah, we'd say, like, yeah, Callie didn't do anything. But we'd also, I think, say that's okay because Callie gets her own, has had her own time to shine,
Right. I think it explains why Sue Lin doesn't do anything in this episode. I don't think it excuses, and I think, in fact, makes it worse.
Sure. But since we're talking about Sue Lin, one of the things that John also mentioned is how Sue Lin's hair is going to be different every week, and a segment of like what's Sue Lin's hair doing this week. So I mean, we don't have to like.
I mean, we can. The great problem with that is that I'm not a cosmetologist, so you ask me what the hell's going on with her hair, and I'll be like, well, her hair is like.
Oh, we can describe it. We can just describe it. Like, I mean, I'm not talking about going in depth here on like hairstyling techniques.
Just a whole segment on how to style your hair like Sue Lin this week. Is it Sue Lin or is it Sue Lin?
It's like one word. It's Soolin.
Yeah, but do you pronounce it like Sue Lin or Sue Lin?
She hasn't gotten enough screen time or mentions or name drops for me to even know, and I'm sure all the characters will pronounce her name differently anyway.
We also, like John mentioned, actually I want to bring this up, we get a scene now-ish when they teleport down. Avon reveals that Aurak is trying to make the ship quicker because there's like jump boosters for when you're in the atmosphere, and they're like trying to wire them into the main boosters. But anyway, Paul Darrow or Avon makes a specific point of calling Aurak it when Sue Lin refers to it as a he. He's like, he likes to slack off, and then Avon says the only thing it has in common with humans is that it doesn't like to do work.
Yeah.
Then he asks Aurak, and Aurak's like, I delegated the problem to computers specializing in engineering of this spaceship.
Slave also gets his/its time to shine in this episode.
Right about now, Scorpio gets spotted in what I think is I thought was like a really cool scene that would have been way cooler in another episode, where they're like, the people on the planet, I guess one of the computers, I didn't really get the exact specifics of this, but I guess one of the computers Aurak asked for information about Scorpio was the computer on the planet Helitrix, or they discovered that Aurak had infiltrated their system somehow because they're investigating. And the screen just pops up the name Aurak, and then it just starts popping up quicker and quicker, and it's like Aurak. And I thought that was like really cool because it's like this. It reminded me of a scene that I've seen before somewhere else. And now I'm completely blanking on it.
The Matrix. No, I don't know.
Oh, it's Chuck. There was a scene in series 1 where... No, it was in season 4 where Chuck pretends to be this guy, Orion, to freak out the main villain. And that's like the bare minimum you need to know for this. But he like hacks into the computer, and the guy's like, who's doing this? And it just says Orion once, and then it starts to pop in quicker and quicker and quicker. And as it's popping in quicker, the guy's like, no, Orion's dead. No. Anyway, I just thought this was a really cool scene that could have been really interesting because it like shows, or at least implies, that Aurak is like this big villain to these Federation guys. Like they're scared of Aurak because the computer like freaks out, like, oh shit, Aurak's in the system. These people are like, shit, it's Aurak, which I think could have been like, I think that could have been really cool if like this episode was like about how these people have all these computers but they're afraid to use them because of Aurak. Like I think
maybe
it could be real. It could have been really interesting. Like Serverland knows how Aurak works and is linked to all the Federation computers. So maybe it's like an episode where Serverland's like really scared to use her computer because like Aurak is hooked into the computer.
You also got to wonder, Orak is a pretty big secret. How many people know about Orak and stuff like that? So
yeah, and that could be the other thing is like these people are seeing this name Orak popping up on the screen. Like I think it'd be really cool if these guys are like, what's Orak and like why is the computer freaking out? I don't know.
Sure. I mean, I wasn't like drawn to this scene as much as you were. I didn't really care about it, but yeah, I guess there's potential for other cool things to stem from this scene.
That was the other thing is that there were a lot of cool things in the story that I liked, but the plot was just so boring and uninteresting that it like masked all these things.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think it's pretty obvious so far that I don't really remember as much as I should about this episode, but like it seems to me that each scene in this episode, maybe not each scene, but it's several scenes in this episode were like, oh, the plot's going to go this way, or like thematically it's going to go this way, and that's going to be really cool. And the next scene you're like, oh, it's not. And then, oh, it's going to go this way, and that's going to be really awesome. But then it just like never really takes any of those branches. It just takes the branch of like...
most predictability.
Yeah, and I mean, like, when you find out why this is called Traitor, when you find out who the traitor is, it's done in, like the lamest way of just, like, a double agent, you know?
Well...
And we find that out pretty soon, because...
I think it's about now,
because Dana, Tarrant, and Hask convene with Lights.
Because they're like, oh, we're going to meet our Federation contact. And it's revealed to be Lights.
Right.
And then, I think
you're like, okay, Lights is the traitor.
Yeah, so you find out Lights is the traitor. But then in the very next scene, Lights reveals to, I think, Slayer that, like...
He's a double agent.
He's a double agent?
He's like a triple agent.
Because he's like, oh, yeah, by the way, I'm a double agent, and I've been telling them all our secrets. And they're like, you're a double agent? He's like, yeah, but I'm telling you now, which makes me kind of like a double agent. And they're like, yeah, I guess that makes sense.
He's some agent, you know.
He's just a free agent, really.
Yeah, I mean, essentially, like, yeah.
Which, when you really think about it, like, Servalan's done this before herself, so...
And does it in this episode, really, at the end.
Yeah, and that's something I want to talk about now. What would Terry Nation do differently in this story?
Oh, you think he wouldn't have Servalan kill?
I think he would have... well, I want to say this for later, and I'll talk about this later.
Let's save it for later.
But... Then Dana and Tarrant get a call from the Scorpio. There's like this other subplot where like the teleporter bracelets aren't working, but they immediately resolve it because Orak just fixes it.
Well, no, there is...
And the audio is not transmitting.
They needed some reason that they wouldn't just contact them and like just explain everything and be like, hey, can we just beam us up and like carpet bomb this place?
Yeah, the like audio transmission isn't working.
Yeah. If they just ignored that, like, nobody would question, like, why aren't you just freaking bombing this place? Like, it wouldn't even come up.
And the other thing is that Scorpio was, like, a salvage ship, so...
Yeah, it's true.
And
I don't know, like, I doubt this is going to happen, but they should, like, weaponize Scorpio as the series goes on.
Well, they seem to be going that way because Avon talks about trying to make the ship quicker in this episode so it moves faster.
I'm sure that's going to get dropped like next episode and never come up again.
You think? I think that line was included specifically by Chris, and I think the reason
really
I think that line was put in there so that later on when they like ignore the travel times between places that they can be like, oh well, we made the ship quicker, so like.
All right, well, that in itself is lame, but the weaponization I'm talking about is, like, heavy arms.
Somehow I don't think that's going to happen.
Like, just install cannons, like, on the side or something.
I don't think that's going to happen somehow.
I don't think it's going to happen either.
When they get the audio system back up and running, Avon calls down and is like, yo, guys, we've been spotted. Can you beam up? And they're like, no, we got to do this. And Avon's
Ourselves.
Like, why? We can just leave. And they're like, but you're the one who wanted to find out what the Federation is doing, so we haven't figured it out yet, so call back. I think even Tarrant does this thing. Sulin's like...
In her one line of the episode.
She's like, hey, we've been spotted, and then you gotta beam up right now, and Tarrant goes, sorry, not receiving you very well, Sulin, sorry. Just takes the bracelet off.
Just left them.
Avon was going to.
Yeah, he was.
Hey, Avon is going a little bit...
He is, and no, I mean, this episode is the one that really drives it home.
Megalomaniacal? Is that how?
Sure.
Is that the word?
I guess. You know, in Rescue and Power, we didn't really see it to this extent. Like, we thought we saw it, but we didn't see it to this extent.
I love it, though.
I don't know. I don't really. And it's mostly in Paul Darrow's delivery, especially in the "I need to kill her myself." You know.
Okay, that line was bad. Well, not.
That line was delivery just was bad.
Yeah, the delivery was weird.
It's not a great I don't think it's necessarily like a bad line.
No, and I think it could be delivered like really well if you just went, "Oh, I need to kill her myself," or like, "I need to." Like emphasis on the need. Like, I need to kill her myself. But the way he delivers it is, "I need to kill her myself."
It's not even myself. It's myself.
I think we're exaggerating it a little bit for comic effect.
Yeah, we are.
Comedic effect.
Like how on Trust Your Doctor, initially it was Nissa, and then like a few weeks later it was Nissa.
And then by the end it was Nissa. Anyway, they decide to go find out what the hell's up with this Pylene 50, sorry, my bad. And so Dana and Tarrant go and they meet this crazed scientist in a wheelchair.
No,
this is very Termination.
Yeah, it is. No, hear me out on this.
This is very Davros, actually.
Hear me out on this. This made me... I didn't like this, but this made me realize something that I actually really do like about Blake 7 that I never really thought about until now, is that Blake 7... Because Pylene is supposed to be... Pylene is supposed to be affecting the entire population of this planet, right? And we never see that. And most Blake 7 episodes do this. We get a very small view of what's going on. Even when things are supposed to be affecting large cities and large colonies, we get maybe just a base or like a hideout or something. Mm-hmm. And I think that contributes to like the bleak feeling of Blake 7, right?
Yeah.
I mean, things feel very industrial. They feel very small scale, like entire populations are being controlled by very few people with very consolidated power. And I think that works really well to the series' advantage, not Series D, but just Blake 7 overall. And I really like that looking back. I think it's done well here, actually, too, where we just get this sort of crazed scientist who is affecting this entire population who we never really sort of see.
Except the thing was, he was like, he didn't want to. He's like, he's being forced against his will because he invented the drug Pylene 50. He said, like, it cured something.
There was some like beneficial use for it, but they like totally twisted that and used it against everyone. I forget exactly what it was.
And so he's like, well, I didn't want to do this. And then he's also like, I'm dying, by the way, and I need this drug to survive. And if I don't cooperate, they cut the drug off and then I die a little bit.
Die a little bit?
Well, yeah, because later on, Silverland's like, I'll cut your drugs off for 3 days. That should kill about 10% more of your body.
Oh, yeah, she does say that.
Maybe he's got that disease that kills you in like 3
10
days.
minutes.
In Doctor Who, if you're not in a hospital and you catch it, you're basically doomed. It's still the most absurd thing Doctor Who's ever introduced is the disease that kills you in like 10 minutes.
And the guy who got it in the hospital. I think that was us just speculating. But no, I mean, I think it's that like his body is deteriorating or like necrifying, whatever the term is.
Yeah. I mean, this is another thing that I thought was really interesting. I mean, it's like Davros, but like the scientist who like just wanted to do good, but then the Federation came and like twisted it and used his research for evil. Like, I think that could be good if that was the main focus of the whole story, but this comes like right at the end as just an explanation of how Dana and Tarrant get a drug that resists the effects of Pylene 50.
I mean, that was Ensor. That was guy who created Imipac. I'm forgetting his name.
Yeah.
In some capacity. I mean,
but both those people ran away from the Federation to get away from them. This guy got caught.
Right.
And like they're forcing him to work for them. And I think that's what makes this different and what makes this potentially opens more doors and makes it more interesting.
Yeah, for sure. This is definitely different. This guy is definitely, I guess his heart is in the right place more than like we saw in Weapon or Aurak, where it's like,
well, I mean, Ensor just wanted to create like his life's work.
And Imipac was a weapon. Like there's no other use for it other than being a weapon.
Yeah, like Aurak at least has like beneficial learning capabilities and like beneficial capabilities.
Yeah. Imipac is just a weapon. There's no other use for him. I mean, you could Yeah, I mean, there's nothing you can do with Imipac other than weaponize
kill someone. It does bring up this interesting
someone.
idea that the Federation seeks out these crazed scientists with crazed ideas, gives them a lot of money to develop these I guess technologies, and then uses them for evil.
Yeah, it's like,
and so with Aurak, they wanted the supercomputer that would help them control the galaxy. Imipac, they wanted this weapon that would let them kill anyone from any distance, basically.
Yeah, and I mean, the Federation already has had a lot of power, yet they're seeking out these very, like, niche things, right?
I mean, it's interesting that the Federation is, like, built on these individual people, their contributions. Like,
we're just basically stolen and appropriated.
Right. Like, right now, they're conquering all these planets because they have Pylene 50, which takes away everybody's ability to produce adrenaline. And it's like if this one guy hadn't come up with that, then the whole empire doesn't exist as it does now. Same thing we can presume would have happened with Imipac and Aurak. Like, those would have completely changed the game, basically.
Right. And you also, maybe this is just me, but I also get the impression that if Pylene 50 wasn't invented, if Imipac wasn't invented or whatever, like, someone else would have invented something else that the Federation would have taken and used. So, like, really... And this really goes back to, and I think in a different way, because in Series C, I said Blake 7 was like the anti-science fiction, right? Or like at least anti-empirical science, where like observation is a big part of the game because of what Series C does with like observation. But like this also might have something to do with it, right? Of this thing of like progress is like no matter what we make, no matter what we do, it's going to get stolen by this galactic power.
Yeah. Or stolen by these random nomads who come by and just dick you over.
Yeah.
See Aurak.
Again, painting the picture of this bleak universe, which
Blake 7 definitely is.
It's great.
That's another reason why we need to take a break after this. Too bleak. We'll have seeped ourselves in bleakness for a year at the end of this.
Bleak 7.
Anyway, basically Dana and Tarrant, they take this drug that inhibits Pylene 50 and they invade the base and take it over, and they get the planet back. The reason why Avon was so interested in this planet was, I think this is another really interesting thing that could have been interesting in another story. He was like, the first time that the Federation conquered Helatrix, it took them 3 years or something like that. And then he's like, but they just did it in like a month right now. And he's like, why did they fall so quickly right now? That was why he was interested, because it took them so long to conquer Helatrix before.
Did they ever answer that, or was it the Pylene? I don't remember. I mean, was it the Pylene?
Well, they didn't answer. Well, yeah, it's the Pylene is why they got it so quickly now, because it inhibited all their adrenaline.
Yeah.
But I think it would have been interesting to see, like, this is a people who, like, resisted the Federation for, like, quite a long time before finally giving in, which is in contrast to...
I don't know if, like, 3 months isn't... Like, Horizon is still resisting in a way.
I mean, I don't remember the exact amount of time that
Volcano
that Avon says, but it was like a non-trivial amount of time before the Pylene 50, and that's why they're there now. There's also this line earlier on which I thought was just hilarious, because they're like, I guess Robert Holmes was trying to build the sense of urgency, right? Because Villa's like, oh, we got to find out why they're capturing all these planets so quickly. They're going to come for us. I think Avon says that, and Villa says, yeah, if they continue at this rate, they'll come to us in a couple years. And I'm like, a couple years? You have years to figure this out. Why do you have to figure it out now? It was like a really failed attempt at trying to build a sense of urgency. It's like, it'll take a couple years for the Federation to catch us. And I'm like, what? Anyway.
Is Scorpio still faster than Federation ships? I somehow doubt that, but like, so. Is it?
Well, if it wasn't before, it is now, using all the sick modifications that Avon made. Anyway, basically...
Servalan.
Yeah, they stormed the facility.
If you couldn't already guess from, like, one, her voice, two, how they mentioned, like, yeah, Servalan's dead. There's no way. They're, like, looking at a picture of Servalan. They're like, there's no way she's still alive. There's no way she's going to show up at the end of this episode. No, that's not going to happen.
Yeah, Dana and Tarrant encounter Servalan, and they beam up, and they tell Avon about it, and that's when he says his line about killing her himself. Right. But before that, there's actually a scene with Servalan and the crazed scientist where she just kills him. And then I think Lights comes in and she just kills him too. Because she's like, I've killed 28 people now to keep my secret safe.
She pretends
There's like a portrait of Servalan in the office too, by the way.
Right. That's what they're looking at. Lights is, again, just a free agent because he tries to team up with Servalan, who is, I guess, Sleer. I mean, like, she is Sleer, but, like, he was working with, but now that she's Servalan, he's, like, also going to form another deal. I don't, like, know what his game
I think he
is.
already knew that she was Servalan.
I wasn't sure.
His dialogue seems to indicate that he already knew.
Yeah. Well, anyway, they decide to continue their alliance. They kiss each other, and Servalan stabs him in the back.
A really poor stab, I might add. Must be like a laser knife that, like, shot something into him, because she just kind of taps him on the back of the spine, and he goes, ah!
Do we see it, or was it?
Yeah, we see it.
Huh. All right.
But then she says the line about having killed 28 people. I think it was 28 people now to keep her secret.
Just like, what's his name from Power, huh? There was like a dispute, like, I've killed 26.
Oh, right.
But yeah, Servalan is looking as flamboyant as ever. She's sort of wearing this, like, crow feather, like, almost Black Guardian-esque outfit. She just needs the crow hood.
Crow feathers is what I thought of when I saw it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the end of the episode. I mean, we kind of glossed over it a little bit, but really, that's about all that happened.
I mean, yeah, you brought up the plot a couple times, and it's so straightforward.
Mm-hmm. Which I think in a show that has been, like, built itself on having either two plots in every episode, like a plot and a B plot, or plots that, like, don't have, like, twists in them, but are, like, unpredictable to an extent.
I'd say twists. I'd say the ones that don't have an A and B plot typically do have, like, a pretty big twist.
Yeah, that's fair. And this one was just, like, really straightforward. Dane and Tarrant beam down, they blow up the base, and they leave. That's it. There's the big reveal that the twist is supposed to be that Servalan's still alive, but it's just done really poorly. Yeah. And that's where, actually, I want to talk about what I think would be different if Terry Nation did this, because Terry Nation would never pass up an opportunity to use Servalan to her fullest extent. And I think, like, first thing we find out is that Sleer is Servalan. I mean, it's pretty obvious from the start, but I think the story is only marginally different in that we find out Servalan is alive, like, right from the start, and I think possibly instead of Lights being the double agent, I think it's Servalan.
How would that work? How would that work?
As Sleer, like, communicating with these people through, like, some communication device. Servalan loved to get her hands dirty, especially in Terry Nation stories.
Especially when it involved manipulating people as well.
And I think, really, I do think most of this actually is Terry Nation-esque, like you said. And like, to me, the only thing that I could see being different if this was written by Terry Nation is that instead of Lights being the one who communicates with the Helots, it would be Servalan in her guise as Sleer, and I think we would find out that it was Servalan, like, pretty early in the episode. Because I think Terry Nation liked to use the fact that Servalan was in an episode as a hook, whereas other writers tended to try to keep Servalan or Travis in the background until they were, like, really needed.
Maybe, yeah. Yeah, I can see that. I mean, mine was, wasn't that big of a difference either. I said that, maybe Avon's dialogue, and just I guess the dialogue in general, but particularly, like, you think of Terry Nation stories versus Chris Boucher's stories, which, those are the two most prominent Blake 7 writers.
Right.
And Avon is a lot of a bigger deal, I guess I'll say, in Chris Boucher's stories.
Right.
So, and even then, like, a lot of Avon's grandstanding, I guess you could say, in this is due to Paul Darrow's acting rather than the script, but I don't know, I just feel like things would have been toned down a little bit maybe if Terry wrote it.
I agree with you. I think that's pretty much how the story would go. I do think that the plot, I think a lot of the elements of this are very Terry Nation-esque and really wouldn't be that different. Robert! I think Bob Holmes writes one more story. I think he writes Orbit, if I'm remembering correctly.
I mean, that's interesting, actually. Blake 7 is, like, really on this cusp of, like, you get these sort of very old school writers like Terry Nation and Rob Holmes. Mm-hmm. But then you also have there's stories like, especially Chris Boucher stories, that feel a lot more similar to, like, modern shows.
Yeah, Chris Boucher, I think Alan Pryor, too.
Yeah, Alan Pryor, for sure.
Ben Steed to an extent.
I think Ben Steed's just off in his own corner doing his own Ben Steed things.
Can you imagine if Ben Steed had written an episode of Doctor Who or serial for Doctor Who?
Yeah, I can.
Are you imagining something that Pip and Jane Baker wrote, but way more misogynistic? Because that's kind of what I imagined.
I guess.
Pip and Jane Baker were supposed to write an episode of Blake 7, weren't they?
Yeah, they were. There was, and it got further than just like they were supposed to do it. There was, I think actual drafts.
Yeah. Wow. Interesting. I had high hopes for the story when I saw it was written by Robert Holmes because he's written some of the best classic Doctor Who stories anyway. And I think I was just kind of let down, really.
Yeah.
Which is a bummer, but it's okay. It's okay.
Yeah, it is okay.
I have nothing else to say.
Yep, that's it from me.
All right, so we have 2 emails, 3 sort of, but 2 of them are from the same person, and they're both rather short, so we're going to combine them. And then also 2 comments from the same person to respond to this week. So we have an email from RG. We have an email from our Danish correspondent who signed his email this time, so I can reveal his name is, I think it's pronounced Jürgen, but if I pronounce that wrong, email me and correct me. But I'm pretty sure, based on my rudimentary knowledge of Afrikaans, that that's how you would say it. And then we also have 2 short comments on the website from David to respond to. So I will start with this email from RG. Read this after you've watched Traitor. If you want an episode that you should rewatch, I suggest Gambit. Most fans love that one, and I think my talk about the bar fight ruined it for you. Hi, Zenith Helitz. I really think the story should have been called, quote, All You Can Eat, unquote, because there are so many scenes where people are munching and slurping away. After Glynis Barber joined the team, there were 3 young people in the cast. They spent so much time mucking around and giggling on the flight deck that they were told if they didn't start, they would be split up. That is evident in this story where Gisette, Stephen, and Glynis aren't sitting next to each other. By the way, Dylan, Glynis probably barracked for the Springboks when she was younger. If you don't understand what that comment means now, I'm going to give you a little flash forward. Jürgen reveals in one of his emails that Glynis Barber is actually British South African, and the Springboks, by the way, if you didn't know, are the rugby team in South Africa, the national rugby team.
Right. I actually knew that she was of South African descent, but I didn't I don't know why I didn't mention it. I just forgot, I guess.
Probably just forgot. The Supreme Empress looks remarkably like Servalan. Stunt people really earned their keep dramatically falling off bits of the rock quarry in this episode. Forbus is how someone would fancy dress as Davros if they ran out of time. We find out that Sleer is Servalan and she's killed 26 people. Blake 7 couldn't even keep Sleer's identity a secret for one full episode week. I like that Blake's crew now can't just fly away from problems in their superfast liberator. They have to think of more interesting solutions. I give it a week. I don't know if you picked this up, but the new Blake 7 logo at the end is also missing the apostrophe.
Yeah, I did notice that. As soon as it showed up, I noticed that. And here's why. Well, I'm not too bothered by it, but like apostrophes are to indicate, and a lot of people don't know this now, surprisingly, but apostrophes are to indicate a missing S. So like back in the day, I guess of like Old and Middle English, to make something plural or to make it possessive, either one, because there's no difference in spelling back then or punctuation, you would just add ES, kind of like you do in Spanish. But eventually people just decided to drop the E in the so apostrophe. Whenever you see an apostrophe now, it stands for a missing E.
Well, I mean, that's actually interesting because like apostrophe in like every other word stands for a missing letter. Like don't, it stands for an O. Yeah. Do not, won't. Won't is weird because it's will not, but it's...
Yeah, but no, yeah.
You get the point. I am becomes I'm. So that's actually interesting. I was always wondering why that apostrophe didn't stand for something, but I guess it does. It stands for a missing E.
I mean, not really anymore, because if you were an elementary school kid and you were to write like an ES instead of apostrophe S, you're like, no, that's wrong, you know.
And also Davids would become like Davids or something.
But also, like, you wonder, would this be like Blakey's 7, like Blake ES 7, you know? Well, probably not. I don't know.
You'd have to like read up on the old school grammar for that. Because that's the other thing is like making something possessive, if it ends in an S, requires actually still adding ES, I think.
And I mean, look, also the thing is,
like James is James ES rather than apostrophe.
It depends
ES.
what style you know what?
Whatever. I don't know.
But also, like before, really the 18th century, there were no spelling, grammar, or punctuation rule. I don't think there were grammar rules. There were really no spelling or punctuation rules in English. So yeah.
English is dumb.
It stood out to me and kind of bothered me that there was no apostrophe, though.
But I think from a design standpoint, no apostrophe looks better.
Sure.
It looks cleaner, I guess.
Yeah.
That's my point.
Probably.
Dana and Tarrant went down to the planet this episode. Did you find that more interesting than in Volcano now that you know them both a bit better? Yes.
Yep, I did. Another reason for me to rewatch Volcano, I guess.
Yeah, I guess. Although in Volcano, the characters weren't really fleshed out, so it's like...
True.
2D pieces of cardboard talking to each other, really, at that point. Down the safe and still a bit sulky, RG. Don't know why you're sulking. Maybe because you feel like you ruined Gambit for us, but I really don't think that you did.
Maybe we should rewatch Gambit.
Special limited edition? Why would it be limited? Special edition of Zenith, where we bloody hell, I'm so done. Rewatch Gambit. The Supreme Empress does look a lot like Servalan. Wow. And they couldn't keep Sleer's identity a secret. Like I said in the Terry Nation segment, I think that Terry Nation wouldn't have even tried to keep it a secret. It would have just been like, boom, Servalan.
That could have been cool, though, is like have Sleer be a recurring behind-the-scenes villain for like 3 or 4 episodes, and then bam, she's Servalan.
Oh, if they'd gone the complete opposite direction, where instead of revealing it in this episode, it's Sleer, boom, Servalan.
Yep. Or maybe that like as an end-of-season like reveal, like a finale type thing, like Sleer was Servalan all along.
I think that could have worked.
Yeah.
I think so, actually.
What if Sleer was like Blake all along?
Boom, Blake. Or Travis. Boom. Survived his fall down.
That spinning vortex of death. Spinning vortex is
redundant.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you for emailing us, Archie. Now we have these 2 emails from Jürgen. Hey again, guys. You have so much fun doing the podcast and always point out stuff I never noticed myself. Keep up the good work. Have reached the web now. Signed, Jürgen.
Yeah, the web was one of my favorite episodes
web
from
was a good
Series A, if I remember correctly.
And then he sent a second email, same day. I think this was an hour and a half later, 15 minutes. How funny of one of you guys is from SA, meaning South Africa. Fun fact, the international 2-letter abbreviation code for South Africa is actually ZA, because SA is taken by Saudi Arabia. So they use ZA, and that actually comes from, I believe in Afrikaans, the word for south starts with a Z, I believe. Anyway, that was just a side note that I wanted to point out. Was wondering, it didn't sound like a British accent. My partner is from Joburg too. Glynis Barber is British South African, by the way. Her original surname is Afrikaans Dutch. That I know I will butcher, but I'm going to try it anyway. Vanderriet? I don't actually know how to say that third word. I don't actually know a lot of Afrikaans because I left the year before I would have started learning Afrikaans in elementary school. So
you learn like a mandatory thing.
Yeah, like you learn Afrikaans starting in 2nd grade. At least at the private school I went to, you started learning in 2nd grade, and I left at the end of 1st grade. So, and then at the private school I went to anyway, you learn Afrikaans from 2nd grade all the way up to I think, or we call it grade 2 there, up to grade, I think till you ended what we consider high school, so like grade 10 or 11.
No, that's a long period.
So, yeah, like a lot of people, at least coming out of the private school I went to, were fluent in Afrikaans, by the time you leave.
Right.
So, and I think there's actually, this is a little bit of a digression before we get into the final comment. I think there is actually there have been studies that have shown that if you learn a second language when you're younger, it improves your learning ability in basically every field. There's like this interesting thing where if you learn a second language, it like makes your brain slightly more, I guess, adaptable to learning new things.
Well, because this is getting into linguistic theory a little bit, but not too much. One language is one like framework to look at the world by, right? There's some things there's some things exist in one language that another language can't even express or can't even like think about in a way.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah.
And then so we do have some short comments from David also to read. Power could be referring to a lot of things. Actually responding to my call for what the hell does power mean? Power between the sexes or obtaining power like Pella wanting the Scorpio for herself. Or more likely, Ben Steed is not very good at writing science fiction. This episode sucks, but it is good compared to the upcoming episode Animals. Animals.
Oh boy.
Just how old is Dana by this point in the series timeline? 22, 23? And how old is Justin? Like in his 40s? Does Justin like his woman to be young, on the young side? Animals was originally written with Callie in mind, and the episode makes more sense that way. But with Dana, it makes Justin out to be a pervert. By the way, thanks for reading out my comments. Well, you have certainly provided quite the teaser there. When we're recording this response to your comment, we are 1 week away from watching Animals. So, whoo boy. Can say that I'm actually looking forward to it now, like in a weird kind of morbid way. We have a
weird way where you just want to watch the car crash, right?
Yeah, like that. I'm surprised I've never mentioned this on the show, but there was this crazy tycoon back in the day in Texas who decided that people just really wanted to watch train crashes, so he decided to intentionally buy 2 trains and crash them into each other full speed, and people were watching. By the way, bad idea. A bunch of people died. I think it's called like the Great Texas Train Crash or something.
Yeah, I was going to say, like, did anyone die?
Yes, they did. Anyway, second comment, when Moloch revealed himself, everybody started laughing in the studio and had to come back the following week to finish the scene without the stupid puppet. Another thing Star Trek borrowed from Blake 7, or was it just coincidence, was food replicators. I actually don't think that was coincidence, because I don't think food replicators were on the original series, but they were on Next Generation.
What's weird is a lot of early science fiction TV, because in terms of writing, science fiction is at least a little older, or as it was known as science fiction, but like you think of these early science fiction TV shows, even animation like the Jetsons, are like kind of obsessed with like food as little pills or bars or like machines that dispense food. Even Doctor
Who did it.
Yeah.
With the food machine.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, I don't believe food replicators were mentioned on the original series of Star Trek. What's interesting is that they are like explicitly non-existent in Enterprise, which is set pre-original series. I don't remember a lot of my Star Trek lore, so that might be that they might not have even been invented at the time of the original series. I don't remember. But out of universe, probably something that someone on the Next Generation was a little bit inspired by. I mean, there's a lot of sharing and
caring,
and stealing and borrowing between science fiction series, I think, in this time. And I think still today, even, there's a lot of inspiration, I guess you could call it, being shared. But anyway, thank you for reaching out to us, David, and also thank you for emailing us, Jürgen. Again, if I'm saying your name wrong, please let me know. I would feel really bad, but it would not be the first time. Like that time that I thought that RG was a man. So thank you for emailing us, all of you. Thank you for reaching out.
Yeah, thank you.
If you would like to email us, you can reach us at thedoctor@decorativevegetable.com. Questions, comments, concerns, angry rants, love letters, your thoughts on Traitor.
Were we just missing something that made you love it?
Did we miss the mark completely? I don't know if we did.
I don't think we did. Until someone calls us out on like missing big things in this episode that make it better than I thought it was.
I mean, possibly. Someone could convince us that it's pretty good. I mean, it's happened before. You can find us on Apple Podcasts and Google Play at Zena, the Blake 7 Podcast. Be sure to leave a rating if you like the show. You can find us on YouTube at Decorative Vegetable.
Check us out on Facebook, Trust Your Doctor. Like us on Facebook. Also check us out on Twitter at TYD Podcast and follow us on Twitter. And next time we're watching Star Drive. But until then, the end.